That's wild. So my friend,
Okay, we're live now, so you can like hold that thought, because we are live. I'm here with my new friend Grayson.
hey
Hello.
there, David.
Nice to see you. We're having so much fun chatting before going live. I just jumped in, and we're gonna get to all the good stuff. Okay, we're gonna get to all the good stuff. But before we get into that and many other topics, I always ask my guests to go back and talk about your childhood, any religion, philosophy. Was there anything strange? An aunt or an uncle that was a fanatical Scientologist or vegan or something? Just talk about your childhood growing up, what it was like, and how you came to believe what you believe right now.
Yeah, sure. I wasn't really raised in any kind of religious household. I just sort of, I mean, I would say I grew up in a lack of any kind of spiritual kind of practices being endowed to me. So I just sort of, I loved watching Bill Nye the Science Guy. I loved learning about the universe. Um, and yeah, it wasn't until much later that I learned about what atheism was. Um, by somebody slamming me up against the hallway and accusing me of being an atheist in like fifth grade or something, and I was like, I have no idea what that is. And
That's how we convert people. It works 100% of the time.
yeah, yeah, he told me that what atheism is, and again, this is like a fifth grader, so he told me what atheism is when you believe in science instead of God. And I was like, oh, okay, then yeah, that's what I am. But I understand, obviously, that's a fifth grade definition, but you can believe in science and God.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I went to Bible camp on one summer, and it was interesting to me, but I never like believed in it or whatever. And so, yeah, just I never have in my life seen compelling evidence that would make me think that there would be a God or a
I
Christianity.
think there might be a god behind your head. What is that on the bookshelf?
There's many things on the bookshelf.
Is that a Pachamama? What is that woman over in the corner? Yeah, there. Yeah.
Yep. It's a gift from my mom. She loves Native American art.
Okay, cool. So, how are things with the family? Do you have siblings and everyone gets along, or what's happening?
Yeah, I'm an only child. Parents are divorced, but they're still friends. Still get along with everybody.
How old were you when you got divorced?
I think I was about 6.
Oh.
But my dad moved in across the street, so I could just walk across the street. And hang out with him.
Okay.
And and then yeah, I mean, everyone's got the crazy uncle. I've got an uncle who thinks Obama was the Antichrist and the rapture's coming any day now. So
send him to me. I want to interview him.
Yeah, we've all got those crazy uncles.
I am the crazy uncle. I don't know what you're talking about. I am the crazy uncle.
All right, yeah, we all either have them or are them.
Yeah. It's better to be the one, because then it's just like, what are you talking about? I'm not crazy. So, how old are you?
I'm 28.
Oh, yeah, you look about 24.
Oh, well, there you go. It's a skincare regimen. I don't know.
Did you meet the one yet? Are you married?
No, I have not.
Oh, what's the problem? You're very, very handsome.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've had, lots of girlfriends, just haven't found the one that's got, everything. I guess maybe I'm a perfectionist.
Your checklist. Oh, you're going through the checklist.
Yeah, maybe I'm a little bit of a slave to a checklist. Maybe.
Forget about the checklist. Forget about that. Just go with the chemistry. And like when I met my wife, she did not check any of my check boxes on any of my lists. Not one. Okay. So it's just going to happen when it happens naturally. I'm sure it'll happen. But what's your ethnic background?
I'm basically a European mutt. French, German, English, Mediterranean.
Yeah. I see the French Mediterranean stuff. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the largest chunk. So your spidey senses are on point.
Olive skin. I got pasty yellow pink skin. It's not very appealing, but
yeah, the olives.
I'm Irish, Welsh, Scottish, and English. So
yep, there you go.
I've got 2 colors, like pasty or burnt to a crisp. But that's like there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you're a science guy, right?
I love science. Yes.
Yeah, I studied physics, and I love science too. But awesome. I'm skeptical. I'm very, very skeptical of a lot of the pseudoscience, and I think that's sort of your specialty too, right?
Yes, sir.
Pseudoscience.
My favorite story growing up was the Emperor's New Clothes. So I get a
Ah,
lot people tell me all the time I'm very skeptical.
okay. Well, we're not gonna talk about the treatment that was mandated for a certain ailment that was going around the past couple of years. We're not
All
going to
right.
talk about that. We're not going to talk about it. I just want to know, did you get it or not? That's all I want to know. Did you get it?
I worked in the medical field at the time, so I was
You
required to.
had to get it. Any
Yeah,
regrets?
you have to be up on all of your shots
Uh,
for like to work in a
no
hospital.
regrets. You don't have any regrets.
Nope, not at
Okay.
all. I
Okay.
mean, I
Okay.
haven't had any health issues.
Okay. Okay.
You know,
Good. Good. That we're not going to talk anymore about that. We're not going to talk about it. But just so you know, I didn't get it. Not going to get it. Okay. That's
all right.
just so you know. Do you have any friends that feel like me? Maybe your crazy uncle.
Oh, my crazy uncle definitely does. Yes. And,
Yes.
and my dad too. So there's
Oh,
lots of
really? Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. So, what I want to do normally, with a person of faith, we talk about the faith and, all that. But because you're into science and skepticism and rational thought and all that sort of stuff, maybe let's start by talking about your podcast, or is it a YouTube channel? What is it? What are you doing?
YouTube
You're trying to put your stuff out there.
Yeah.
What's the vision? What's the plan? What's the dream? And how's it been going so far?
Yeah, it's been going pretty well. I'd say that there's kind of maybe two prongs. On the one prong, I think it'd be awesome to be a science communicator, like with a wide audience, being able to talk about some of like the things
Like
that I'm.
Bill Nye kind of guy?
Bill and I would be great, yeah. As in terms of conveying the stuff that I find to be fascinating, that I'm passionate about, being able, because I think one thing that I enjoy and I, think I'm pretty good at is taking complicated information and then communicating it in a simple way that can be understood, by a lay audience. So I
Cool.
enjoy doing that stuff. Science communication is really fun for me. And then on the other prong is I love arguing with people, and so I love doing these debates about science and history. I so far my channel is mostly young Earth creationism debates, but I want to do like flat Earth, race realism, like a lot of the stuff that I would consider like climate change denial, like anti-vax stuff, anything that I would generally consider to be pseudoscience.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I'm not a pseudo scientist because I don't take a scientific I don't I don't reject science on a scientific basis. I reject the science that I reject is rejected on either just purely based on my free will, like, hey, you want me to do this thing, I'm not going to do it. That's sort of like a punk rock attitude I have, where it's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Okay, it might be the best medicine ever invented. It might be. We'll wait and we'll see. I mean, it might be, but I'm not denying. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. But I'm not going to play ball. Sorry. And then when it comes to young Earth creationist stuff, it's not based on science. It's based on religion. My religion teaches me that God is all powerful and he created man from the slime of the earth, and he took Eve from the rib, and I believe it. I choose to believe it. It's not a question of science for me. And when it comes to like, well, how do you rectify that, or what do you call it when you make it fit together with science? Reconcile. How do you reconcile it with the science? Well, I don't. But it is reconcilable, not by me, but it's reconcilable, obviously, because truth cannot contradict truth. It's not like I'm denying any science. It's like, well, how do you interpret this pile of bones, or this slice of the earth, or the radioactive decay? How do you interpret all that stuff? It's like, I don't interpret it. I don't. I could.
I think that might be a little bit of a category error in terms of empirical truth and spiritual truth. And you want to say that there's only one truth,
Yeah,
but
there's no contradiction possible. No contradiction possible. None. But
right.
People can interpret the same data in different ways. And I don't need to go and learn how to come up with a scientific justification for my young Earth creationism. I'm not interested in that. Plenty of people are doing that. And are they having success? Are their arguments good? I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. I really don't care.
Well, hey, I can respect that more than those who wrap their religious beliefs up with this kind of pseudoscientific justification to try to give it some sort of scientific legitimacy.
Yeah.
I can respect your approach a little bit more at least. So
Yeah. And I'm confident, like, I mean, I might be wrong. I also admit I might be wrong. I might be wrong. Like, I'm a skeptic at heart. I might be
that's
wrong.
very rare.
I might be wrong. And the church that I belong to, the Catholic Church, is against me in this current modern age. They're like, no, David, it's not young Earth creationism. It's science. Trust the science.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my church is telling me, and I'm like, sorry, no, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it because I don't think that I'm an ape, and I don't think the Blessed Virgin Mary was an ape. You know.
Well,
So,
categorically, all of the things that differentiate apes from the other animals also apply to you.
yeah, we belong to every clade and blah 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 down to the eukaryote.
I mean, just if you're going to make a list of this is what makes something ape versus the other animals,
yeah,
all those criteria
yeah,
you would also yourself meet.
yeah.
So just as a category, like it's pretty
Yeah.
empirically justified.
Well, yeah, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with noticing patterns and similarities and whatever. Like, I could compare myself to a pile of crap and see a lot of similarities, but I don't think I'm a pile of crap. I don't think I evolved from a pile of crap, even though there's a lot of, DNA matches and there's a lot of stuff we have in common, and we can make a long list of similarities, but it's just like, so yeah, my approach, I did study physics. I've worked in quantum physics. I've worked in astrophysics. Okay.
Very cool.
And I have a published paper my name appears in the third spot on a published paper in quantum physics. So I know how science works. And at the end of the day, it's about the results. Are you getting the results? Are these predictable, repeatable results? Period. And all the fancy books explaining all the philosophy around the science is so much hogwash. And some of it might be true, some of it might be false. Who cares? It's just a book. The science, I know what the science is. I know what the work is. It's boring. Science is boring. Now, you're excited because you like the stuff around science that's adjacent to science. And I understand that. I understand that because it is exciting, but you have to, I hope that you're going to be able to differentiate always the hard science from the interpretation thereof and the packaging thereof and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
That's very important because, we have high-level scientists in every field who disagree vehemently about the interpretation of the same data. Period. There is no uniformity of consensus in the sciences.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, if there's something that is not like a consensus, or I have no problem in admitting that if we don't know something or if something is unknown.
Yeah, and it's a tentative thing. Like, for now, this is the best model we have. It's better than the other models, and it builds on the other models, and
all empirical knowledge is provisional.
Yep. Exactly. But my knowledge, my certain knowledge that God exists and that he is infinite in every pure perfection and so on and so forth, that is more certain than any scientific hypothesis or theory or even the observation. Yeah, well, not to you because you haven't thought about it. You haven't thought about metaphysics, like you told me before going live. You haven't really delved into philosophy and metaphysics. So we're not going to go too deep. I'm not going to push you on that, and I'm not here to make you look foolish or something like that. Like, oh, you don't understand. But we'll talk about the stuff that you're excited about. Like I said before going live.
Real quick, David. Also, I do love learning new things.
Yeah,
it's like probably my favorite hobby is learning new stuff.
Okay.
So. I am always, one of the reasons that I really like these debates is that sometimes new things come up or things I haven't thought about in that way that force me to do a lot of deep thinking and research afterwards, where I end up learning new things I wouldn't have otherwise.
So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the uncaused first cause. Is this a phrase you're familiar with?
Like I'm familiar with it with like the Kalam cosmological argument context.
Yeah. So I want to just throw a couple of ideas and then you can go away and think about it or whatever. The contingent, everything that's in this created world is contingent. It's caused. There are effects of causes, and I
already kind of don't agree.
Okay, so you think that there are necessary uncaused. You think there are uncaused effects?
And I would say that you're familiar with this. I mean, this is what we see in quantum mechanics, right?
No.
You see effects without causes, causes without effects, because they're probabilistic determinism. So you can have a percent option that, like, where there is no like cause like a radioactive decay or an electron orbital jump or quantum tunneling effect. There's no immediate known cause to these things.
Yeah, well, just because it's not known doesn't mean there's no cause. You know, the thing that you heard me talk to Matt Dillahunty about, because I know you listened to that episode, was the principle of sufficient reason. Like, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for absolutely everything, including God, including the uncaused first cause. It just so happens that for the necessary being, God, the reason for his being is in himself, not in another. But in contingent beings, the reason is in another. And I've worked in quantum physics, like I told you. I've published a paper, and it's one of the most reliable sciences that we have. Our technology is built on it. We're communicating on it right now because it is 100% predictable and reliable. Because you know those bell-shaped curves of the wave function where the probabilities, you know about that?
Yes.
Every time, without any exception, no matter what the shape of that particular curve is, whether it has one hump or two or three or four, whatever the shape of that probability distribution curve is, 100% of the time, it is always fulfilled. As you add your data points one by one by one by one by one through your experimentation, it always ends up fulfilling the curve perfectly. So it's like if you tell me, or if I tell you that I know that every seat in the stadium is going to be filled, but I don't know in what order and who's going to sit. Jenny's going to sit in seat 3A or 5B. I don't know, but I know that once everyone's in the stadium, every seat will be filled. So it's the same thing with these statistical sciences. We don't know. We don't know where Jenny's going to come in and when she's going to sit down, but we know that when everyone has come in, it will be fulfilled. And it's the same thing with these probability distribution functions. And I want you to know that the Copenhagen interpretation is one among many philosophical schools. It's one among many.
I don't even agree with the Copenhagen interpretation.
Yeah. So neither do I. And there are many interpretations. I don't know if you've read the works of Wolfgang Smith, his interpretation. He's got a Platonic interpretation of quantum physics and of general relativity and special relativity. So
it's funny, actually, just yesterday was the first time I'd ever heard the name Wolfgang Smith. And it was from a geocentrist in my comments saying that Wolfgang Smith shows evidence that the Earth is the center of the universe. So
yeah. I want to be a geocentrist. I'm not a geocentrist, but I would like to be one.
Here you go.
I worked at the space agency, so I'm I've got some big questions. I haven't been able to fully commit to geocentrism. I'd like to.
I do think that what you're saying, though, does not apply to an individual electron or individual, like when we were talking about, right, like a decay. Is there anything that you can know about that system to where you can predict which, like?
No, I just told you that. I don't know where Jenny's going to sit.
You said that it was a cumulative thing. So you're saying that you can't predict for any individual stadium goer, but you can predict that the stadium will get filled 100% over time or whatever. But again, I still would say that breaks the notion of causality because it no longer applies on the individual level.
No, because if you step backwards, just do a thought experiment, okay?
I know,
Picture the probability distribution in repeated experiments and how it fills up that curve with your data.
I understand.
Now go from the finish of the experiment. Now step backwards, electron by electron, and you see that it removes a little chunk here from the curve, and then a little chunk over here. So it is absolutely working backwards. We see that it's absolutely deterministic. That it has nowhere else to go but to its little home. Its little home there.
Probabilistically.
No, it's not probabilistic. It's deterministic. It's deterministic. It's deterministic. It's deterministic.
It's probabilistically deterministic. It is not a strict causal determinism. It's probabilistic determinism. And on an individual level, like you keep wanting to say, when you have a group that fits these nice belts, I'm saying on an individual level, your notion of causality breaks down.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Because explain it without on a one electron basis.
I'm explaining when we go to the end of the experiment and then we rewind time just for one electron. I know exactly where I can predict exactly where that one electron is going to go because there's only one place where it can go.
I'm saying an experiment where you only have one electron. You don't have a group forming a bell curve. You only do it one time with one particle. How is causality preserved in that instance?
We know it's preserved because of the Gedanken thought experiment that we just did, where we go backwards in time and we look at.
No, you changed the experiment again.
No.
One particle. Come on now. Don't give me all this multiple particles, averaging statistics. Give me one particle, and you'd lose causality.
No, you know, the whole thing with yeah, go ahead.
You're familiar with Bell's theorem, right? Yeah. Where there's no local hidden variables.
Yeah, that's one approach. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just thought I would point that out because you're saying that it's some sort of epistemological problem where we just don't know all the enough information. But it seems like there is no amount of information out there that like would ever allow us to determine whether or not an electron is going to decay at a certain time or not, or quantum tunnel or any of these quantum activities. Yeah. There's no amount of information that is available or like possible to know that would allow us to predict when that would happen. It's an effect without a cause and without an immediate local cause.
Okay, well, if you want to qualify it, as some do, as saying it's not immediate and local, okay, that might be the case. But you have to remember that the framework that I'm working from is that it's literally angels, spirits, angels that are doing all of this stuff. It's a supernatural basis for reality. You know, like how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? It's like literally like angels.
Yeah, they were debating about that in Constantinople, and then they got their walls knocked down by the Ottomans. That's what happens when you go down the rabbit hole.
Angels have no matter, and they don't take up space and time. But it's just a funny.
I would
joke.
Actually go one step further and say angels have no existence.
Yeah, of course he would. But you know. So, you know, the fact is that there is a mystery, even for the atheist, there's a mystery at the heart of the fundamental particle.
Sure.
There's a mystery there. And, you know, you can accuse me of having a God of the gaps. And I admit my God is the God of the gaps. And he's the God of everything in between the gaps. He's the God of everything. He's the God of everything. Okay. So I don't have a problem because it's like if only you could understand the mystical supernatural conception that I have of all of creation, of everything that is, because you have a sort of naive realism, I would dare to say, a naive realism where you take for granted that your sense perceptions are real, they correspond with reality. You don't have any philosophical basis for that, but you take it for granted with this naive realism that, oh yeah, the other person exists and the physical world exists and these sorts of things. You have no basis for that.
I'm not a solipsist. Yeah. I got one time in middle school, I got into a very foolish debate with somebody that, you know, proved that the universe wasn't created last Tuesday.
Yeah, last Thursday. It was Thursday.
I understand it's a total waste of time, and I'm not a solipsist, but I can't justify that. I just think that it's a silly position to hold.
Yeah, you're a naive realist. That's the technical term for it. Most people are. I mean, most people are. Yeah. But if you...
I think that it is the normal, sane position to have.
Well, I think the sane position is to realize that the contingent necessarily implies the necessary being, the one and only necessary being that is God. And, you know, there are a lot of really excellent proofs, but I think the best proof of the uncaused first cause is not the Kalam, it's not any of those. It's the modal proof of Blessed John Duns Scotus, where he talks about manifest reality right here, right now, the effects and the causes of those effects in the moment that are simultaneously acting in a certain given moment of time. And the first member of that efficient causality, that essentially ordered causality, the first member of that is possibly and therefore necessarily atemporal, because the only way an atemporal first cause could not exist is if it were logically impossible. And yet the fact is that it's manifest, the effect is manifest, therefore the first cause is necessary. And because it's possible for it to be atemporal, it's necessarily atemporal because
Okay, hold on. You lost me a long time ago. Because you said that you studied physics.
yeah,
So you know in the theory of relativity, there is no such thing as simultaneity. First of all, there's no such thing as a universal simultaneous event, um, or like two events that can be simultaneous. That the relativity theory rules that out. But then you also seem to just assume a first cause to the where the first part of it, like the first cause comes in, just seems like you just assumed your premise from the start.
no,
Is
no,
what
no,
it's
no. Okay, let's go step by step. Okay, simultaneity. I don't believe Einstein's theories of relativity.
Okay. Well, you said you studied physics. I mean,
yeah, I studied it. I studied it. I don't believe that there's no simultaneity. I don't believe there's no simultaneity. And I can prove it to you right now. I can prove it to you right now with common sense. Okay? When for a cause to be a properly so-called a cause, a per se cause, it has to be acting now. For it to be immediate, it can't be mediated in time, because there are many kinds of causes.
You just were saying that you were speculating about non-immediate, non-local causes in quantum theory, and now you're saying, of course, a cause is immediate and local. I mean, that seems like a contradiction.
Listen to me. Well, I mean, maybe I misunderstood what the non-local, the non-immediate cause, the context of that. But let me just say that there are causes which are mediated. I mean, obviously, right? Like your parents procreated you, and that was mediated in time, right? Like the act that takes place immediately has to be differentiated from those causes and effects which are mediated in time. Like when I throw something, it's going to break the window that it's headed towards, and the throwing and the breaking, they're causally connected, but it's not immediate. It's mediated through a whole chain of accidental causality and accidentally well, in this case, there's no accidentally ordered causality, but there's accidentally
a string of immediate and local causes that you're just tracing backwards.
Well, there's an interlocking grid of immediate simultaneous causality, which is causality properly so called, or essentially ordered causality, and there's also the temporal or mediated causality, which happens horizontally on timeline. And at any given moment in time, we can freeze time with our mind's eye, and we can look at what are the actual immediate causes that are acting now as compared to those from the past or those that are about to come into the future.
You're just stringing together a chain of causes. That and each cause was very local, real.
Yeah, but let's say you've got a bunch of people in a mosh pit at a concert, and they're all standing very close like sardines, and someone's rolling on top of the mosh pit, like rolling over everyone's heads. Okay, as he's rolling, he's messing up the hair of everyone in the club. Okay, but it's only when he's actually physically in contact with your hair that he's messing up your hairdo. And so there's a temporal component to it. Like there was a time before he messed up your hair where he was messing up your friend's hair, and there will be a time after he messed up your hair where he messed up the other friend's hair. And that's everything that we're talking about in this scene involves time, but it also involves, so that's accidentally ordered, accidental causality, but it also involves per se causality, which is actually causing an effect right now at this particular moment. He's only messing up the hair of certain individuals. He's not messing up the hair of everyone else, even though if we play the whole tape, he messed everyone's hair up eventually, but that was mediated through time.
I don't understand why, because I keep summarizing this in a way that I feel like continues to be valid. That all you're doing is stringing together a chain of immediate local causes.
Right.
And that seems to apply to that scenario too. And every time I say that, it sounds like you're disagreeing with that as being a summation of what you're saying. But then
you're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're not seeing the distinction that I'm making, which is that, yes, there is a temporal component to what's happening always in this creation, but causality, properly so called, is only happening simultaneously. Always, always. Because if it is in the past, then it's not immediate. And if it's in the future, it's not immediate. Only proper causality, properly so called, is immediate. It's not mediated. It's simultaneous.
So the current view within physics, right, is that the present is not in any way ontologically privileged compared to other points in time. And I would also say that, like,
well, the fact that they acknowledge the present
is not simultaneous. Like, if we broke this down onto a scale of like one Planck time at a time, none of the events that you've described are actually simultaneous.
What are you talking about? You just said that there's a consensus in the sciences that the present is not privileged, right?
Yes.
So the present is not privileged. The present is not privileged. So what is not privileged? What is it that's not privileged, if not the present? What is it that's not privileged, if not the present? Because you said the present is not privileged.
Can you ask that in a way that's like not like a double negative?
You want to tell me that the present is not privileged while denying that there's a present. Well, it's the present that's not
denying
privileged.
There's a present.
Okay.
I mean, we experience time the way that conscious beings experience time is through the experience of a present. But physically, ontologically, is that present real or differentiated from any other moment in time? We don't have evidence that that is the case.
Of course we do, because right now it's Thursday. Yesterday was Wednesday, tomorrow's Friday. Okay? Thursday comes after Wednesday and before Friday.
Yeah. Because we're conscious.
It's ontologically true.
That's the way that we experience
it's reality. It's reality. It's reality. And the same thing, however small you want. I took 24 hours. I could shrink that 24 hours down to Planck time like you suggested. Right? I could shrink it down to Planck time.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a before and an after. Always. Except for in my Catholic worldview, there is a first moment and there's a last moment. There's creation and then there's the second coming of Christ. That first moment doesn't have a before and the last moment doesn't have an after. That's my understanding as a Catholic. I don't expect you to concede that point to me. But for the thought experiment, every other moment, every other Planck moment has moments before it and moments after it. Right?
And you're familiar with like A and B theories of time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
This.
So you're just describing one understanding. I don't think that there's any consensus about that understanding.
There's no consensus. The world is not on my side. The world is on your side. When it comes to the jab, when it comes to global warming, when it comes to what are the other controversies? The age of the universe. When it comes to our
I can demonstrate those things empirically. So they're you can leg up.
You can have your model, but it's like you said, it's a provisional model.
Yes.
It's a provisional model. It's just a provisional model. I have something that is not provisional, right? I have the certain knowledge that comes from metaphysics, that comes from pure reason without recourse to any faith whatsoever. There's zero faith involved whatsoever. It's just pure reason.
Okay, man. But I've never heard before. That's all new to me. But I would say that a provisional model is the best model because it's based on empirical data.
Right, but another one of my axes that I like to grind with the atheist is when it comes to the natural sciences. You guys are so excited about the natural sciences, empirical science, but you don't remember, you choose to forget that you have axiomatic assumptions which are metaphysical and philosophical in nature, underpinning all of your beautiful science.
Yes. I mean, I agree with that. That is, you can ask any logician, they're obviously going to admit that there are certain axiomatic presuppositions that all systems of logic are rest upon, including rationalism and empiricism.
Yeah, and we cannot, it's my contention, it's an unpopular opinion today, but I say we cannot reject the principle of causality, the principle of proportionate causality, the principle of sufficient reason. We cannot. It's madness. But the scientists today, it's in vogue to jettison all of that.
I mean,
it's in vogue.
I would just say let the empirical evidence be a guide.
Yeah.
And if we see empirical evidence, such as on the quantum mechanical scale, where we start to see our very notion of causality breaking down, it seems like maybe causality is a macroscopic emergent phenomenon.
Right. Right.
I mean, that's what the evidence would seem to imply to me, just looking at what we see in quantum mechanics.
I think I figured out how you and I can come to more common ground, okay?
Okay.
Because we're not jiving here too well philosophically. Why don't we talk about free will? Do you believe in free will?
No, I do not.
That's good. I admire you for that, because that's the only rational take for an atheist to have.
I would agree.
Yeah, that's the only rational take. So, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to take your worldview seriously, because, you know, without free will, it's just your configuration of matter energy
Yep.
interacting with my configuration of matter energy, and it's like, so what? Are you also a nominalist?
Yep.
Are you a mereological nihilist? That's what one of my guests was.
I've never heard that category, so maybe I am. I'd say I'm an optimistic nihilist in a kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of sense. But yeah, I would say I'm a nihilist.
Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah. Let me look it up. Because one of my guests was talking to me about his... there are no objects with proper parts.
I probably have to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah,
maybe if somebody was making an argument to me, I would maybe be able to.
Okay, bear with me. I'm going to read to you from Wikipedia, because this is something that I haven't mastered, but my friend was all excited about it.
Okay.
Our everyday perpetual experience suggests that we are surrounded by macrophysical objects that have other smaller objects as their proper parts. For example, there seem to be such objects as tables, which appear to be composed of various other objects, such as table legs, a flat surface, and perhaps nails, bolts, and other things. Those latter objects in turn appear to be composed of still smaller objects, and so on. Indeed, every putative material object our perceptual faculties are capable of representing appear to be composed of smaller parts. Mereological nihilism claims that there are no composite material objects. According to mereological nihilism, there are only fundamental physical simples arranged in various special patterns. For example, the mereological nihilist claims that despite appearances to the contrary, there really are no tables. There are only fundamental physical simples, spatially arranged and causally interrelated in such a way as to jointly cause perceptual faculties like ours to have table-like perceptual experiences.
Yeah, so, I mean, in principle, I would consider all matter and energy to be, like, fundamentally just, like, forms of the same basic stuff, just sort of cooled down and differentiated from each other.
Rearranged.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess in that sense of the word, obviously I don't go around saying there's no such thing as tables, actually, because it's all made of quarks and
molecules.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I'm not going to be doing that because I think that that's a silly
You're never going to get laid if you do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very silly position to take if you're like, but I mean, like, in theory, I can agree with it that it's all, you know, fundamentally the same differentiated forms of energy and, you know, matter, whatever, but
nominalism. I think it marries nicely with nominalism. I think it might be a safe take for you to have.
I mean, I can agree with it just for sake of argument, whatever. It seems like something I might agree with.
But you're not going to have a parade about it.
Yeah. I don't think it's anything like world shattering or I'm going to just suddenly stop believing that tables exist. I mean, for my practical everyday, you know, day-to-day life, obviously, like, I'm going to go around as if free will and tables exist.
Okay. Like David Hume. Did you read a little bit about him?
I mean, I'm familiar with David Hume, but I'm no philosophical historian.
You haven't read that much.
I think that there's an argument from biology, like neurobiology, that free will doesn't exist, and there's also an argument from physics. But I mean, like, you know, there are lots of reasons I think that free will doesn't exist, but I don't think that that like takes anything away from my experience of my own free will. I think I can still have my own experience of free will.
Do you like compatibilism?
Um, yeah, I wouldn't be able to have an authoritative opinion on
Oh,
it.
okay. It's basically what you're saying. Like, we have the impression of freedom, even though everything's constrained.
Yeah, I mean that sounds right to me.
I may be butchering the definition. You have to go and look up yourself. But
Yeah.
I'm really interested. We got about 20 minutes left, and if you don't mind, I want to change gears. I want to talk about history because it's something I struggle with. All the names, the dates, it's like a bunch of gossip, like this person did that and the wars and all that sort of stuff. What is your angle? What are you excited about, and which period? And is it more like political history or religious history or the history of science, or what are you excited about?
Oh man, I mean that's such a broad question. I probably spend the most amount of time. I love learning about like the Bronze Age. So
When was
like
that roughly? Is that around the time of Christ, or when was that?
like before like 1000 BC.
Okay.
So
Okay.
before uh, Christ is in the Iron Age, not the Bronze
Oh,
Age.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the
I'm
Bronze
still
Age.
very interested in like the first century AD, the time
Yeah.
of Christ. I mean, I'm fascinated by history in most periods, just not like immediate. Like I don't really read about 20th century or
Contemporary.
World War II kind of stuff.
All the gossip in Hollywood and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with that history, but I'm really interested in ancient history.
What is it that you like about it? Is it the human element, or is it more technology and science and evolves, or what do you like?
Um,
Like, tell me something you made a video about that was historical and why you were excited to make the video about it.
well, I made a short summation of the history of Uruk, which is like the first city, basically, the first or
Oh.
like the first large urban city in ancient Sumeria, Mesopotamia. So I love that period of history, like the Sumerians, the ancient Mesopotamians. I think honestly, I'm fascinated. I mean, like I love fantasy, so like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, that kind of stuff. And so that kind of primed the pump to get me interested in ancient history, probably. So I just love being able to, you know, I mean, it's all part of the story of the human species. So I just love like learning about all the different episodes of our past.
Okay. It might be a little bit off topic, but is that a map behind your head? What is it a map of?
Yes. That's a map of Southern California. That's actually it's three-dimensional, so you can feel all the bumps and the ridges and
Ah.
stuff. It's
Do you
because
live there?
I used to live and work in San Diego.
Oh, that's supposed to be one of the nicest cities.
It is, I can confirm. It's expensive, but the weather's perfect.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's pretty nice. So now you're in Texas?
Yes.
What are the, like, just briefly, what are the pros and cons of Texas? You're part of Texas.
I very much dislike Texas.
Oh.
I just don't know where I want to live after San Diego. So,
Oh.
yeah.
You're spoiled now.
Yeah. I mean, Texas is hot. I really don't have anything positive to say about Texas other than it's cheap.
Oh, it is cheap?
Yeah.
Well, compared to San Diego, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not saying much, but
Yeah.
yeah. So very fascinating. I'm wondering now. I'm just listening to you as you talked about the history. I'm wondering if there's a little bit of like romance and escapism of like the story of history and like.
Yeah, I love the story of history and thinking of it as like the story of, this crazy human species of ours.
What are you sensitive to the dark parts of history? Does it get you down when you think about all the bad times and war and greed and all that, or you revel in that too, the dark side?
I wouldn't necessarily say I revel in it or that it really emotionally
You don't lose
impacts.
sleep. You don't lose sleep thinking about
No,
it.
I don't lose sleep about it. I mean, I'll think about it and how horrible that would be to experience or whatever. I mean, I like very much like imagine history. I have a strong creative imagination. So when I'm reading about history, I try to imagine what it'd be like to experience those events. And I think that's a very interesting part of it. But yeah, other than just like, oh yikes, that sounds like it would be no fun and totally horrible, then it doesn't really like keep me up at night. It's like I don't have intrusive thoughts about the darkness of human history.
Today, what's your, so you said you're 28, right?
Yep.
Which generation are you? Do you know? I'm Gen X.
I'm like right on the cusp. I think technically I'm a millennial, but I'm like almost. I think the cutoff for Gen Z is 97, and I'm 95.
Oh, really? Okay, okay. The millennials, they don't really, they're not the best generation, right? Like that's what we've heard. They're not the
I don't
best.
know, man. It sounds pretty subjective to me.
I wasn't throwing shade or anything. I hear some stuff on the internet, like like the Zoomers, is that what they call it? These young
Yeah.
kids. Uh, they're very vocal about it, like that they're better than the millennials. But maybe that's just
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe that's just
I
the way young people are. Like they always
Yeah.
do that. You were
I mean,
probably
there's tons of instances in ancient history where you have the Greeks complaining about the younger generations these days, and they're
oh
all
yeah.
spoiled by their technology, and I mean, it's the same stuff you see.
The Greeks had their tablets, but they were stone tablets.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Greek greatest generation, and it's like, oh, we made Athens what it was, and we were all, just by the elbow grease and the, sweat, and then kids nowadays, they don't appreciate it, and they're all about this new philosophy stuff, and their heads in the clouds, and you see it all the time. You see it with whenever they got the printing press. And they were complaining, oh, these books are going to rot all these young kids' brains. All they do is sit around reading all day. Like the same stuff you heard about television was what they were saying about books. So, history rhymes.
Well, since I've got you here, I mean, it might be fun to talk a little bit about, like, I'm just sort of like taking advantage of you here now. But
It's maybe rephrase that, but
well, I'm opportunistically picking your brain, let's say. Internet culture, it can be very toxic and very pornographic. I feel bad for the kids today because they have access to all kinds of dark stuff, sex and violence. How did you navigate that, and how, like, the generation beneath you, the young kids, are you worried about that, or you think that people have common sense and have a natural sort of tendency to virtue, and they can avoid falling into the traps of the internet?
yeah, I don't know if I have a very good or deep, profound answer to that. I mean, I definitely have been exposed to my share of stuff on the internet that I would rather not have seen. Like, I had a roommate in like middle school. I went on like a camp or whatever, and a roommate would just like wake me up playing a video of like Mr. Hands or any kind of like weird, gory kind of stuff.
Goatsy and all that.
Yeah, goatsy. Yeah. So I've seen that stuff. Kids in middle school, they'd gross each other out, showing blue waffle or whatever, all these things. So I've seen that stuff. I think, I don't know. I mean, maybe if you're like predisposed to being like mentally disturbed, maybe that kind of stuff can like push you over the edge. But I personally, I don't feel like that's like
Traumatizing.
I don't feel like I'm traumatized by it. It's not something that I'm like having nightmares about or thinking about. Like, I probably haven't thought about Goatsy or Mr. Hands for like years and years until you asked me that question. So
yeah, well,
I don't know.
Hopefully tonight you'll sleep well too. But so
yeah, I don't have nightmares, so it's all
that's
good.
good. Yeah, that's good. I used to have nightmares when I was a kid, and even a young adult, and then I did a psychological trick on myself. I said, hey, it's just a dream, it can't hurt me. And then I said, instead of not enjoying the nightmare, it's just free entertainment. Why don't I enjoy the nightmare? And then, lo and behold, I stopped having nightmares. Like, as soon as I started to enjoy it, they went away. So that's a little trick.
That works for you.
Yeah, it might have been coincidence. It might have been coincidence. Might have been something I ate. But what do you think about politics? Because you're a young man in a crazy world, and you live in the United States of America.
Yeah.
Which is crazy with politics. They're obsessed with politics. So do you ignore it? Can you ignore it? Do you want to ignore it? Are you deep into it? Are you voting? Like, what's happening?
When you like are driving on the highway and you see like a car accident, like a car on fire, and you just can't help but like rubberneck and just stare at it. I'm like that, like personally, I'm not conservative. But I would say that most of the political content that I watch is like far right, like conservative on Rumble. Can't even be talked about on YouTube. I look at Trump's Truth Social,
Oh,
and I find it like I approach it kind of like Jane Goodall as she's observing the chimpanzees. Like I'm just fascinated by it. It's like I can't look away. It's very entertaining. I don't agree with any of it, but I'm sort of I'm morbidly curious and or morbidly like fascinated by it to where like I very much it's like popcorn entertainment to me. Like what crazy things are the conservatives saying next? So there's like I'll watch televangelists like Kenneth Copeland too, who I don't know if you're familiar with him, but just recently he literally was going through and said the prophets are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Jesus, and George Washington.
uh,
And like, and he is the wealthiest televangelist in the world. He has made the most money from Christianity of anyone. And he's literally saying, Trump is the Messiah. He's here to save us from our sins. George Washington like made a new covenant with God. America's the new Israel. I mean, I find all that stuff very, very entertaining to watch, but like purely from an entertainment viewpoint. I mean,
yeah.
it's maybe like absurdist or cynical where I'm like, all this stuff, I wish it wasn't happening, but I find it very entertaining.
What about the left? Do you find them crazy?
There are certainly some cringe people on the left, but overall, from a moral standpoint, I sort of disagree with like I think that it's immoral the kind of wealth distribution, like the income inequality that we have in the country. So, I can definitely understand the left perspective more because I personally find that stuff to be, morally wrong. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of cringe people on the left where I can watch them and be like, yeah, obviously that person is very cringy. But I tend to agree with overall where they're coming from more than the right typically.
You never watched Nick Fuentes?
I've seen Nick Fuentes, yes.
Just snippets, or you've sat down and watched a full 2 hours of it, or?
I've seen full interviews with Nick Fuentes and debates.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What was your impression? What impression did you get?
I think that he's a very cringe Twinkie Nazi. Like he obviously is very repressed sexually and he's kind of like into very young girls. And if you look at his it actually leaked his internet search history, and the kinds of porn he was watching will astound you.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's watching like trans porn, cat.
Are you serious? This must be
cat boys.
This must be fake news. I can't believe it.
No, I mean he's a sexual deviant.
That might be fake news. I'll have to ask because I know some people who know him. I'll have to ask them about that.
Well, I'll just say that as a joke, right? As a joke, he invited a little trans femme cat boy to spend multiple days with him in his hotel room, just as a joke, right? He's like, oh yeah, it'd be really funny if I did that. So yeah, there's definitely something going on with Nick Fuentes where he's deeply in the closet about some kind of feeling that he's got.
It could be. I mean, I personally have sympathy for him. I think he's a cute little guy and he's innocent. But I mean, if he's watching any kind of pornography, that goes against his religion. He's claiming to be Catholic like I am. And people that I know that know him say that he's a good Catholic boy. But I mean, for you, I mean, the funny thing about you is that you don't really have a basis to judge sin or sexual perversion. Like people could just do whatever they want to do, right?
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with him if he likes trans kitty boy porn. But I think that he's a hypocrite.
Hypocrite, yeah. Well, that's the main concern, right? Like that would be the main concern. Like obviously.
Yeah, if he's actively advocating against those people politically, but then in his private life he's secretly turned on by them. I mean, I think that that's pretty problematic.
My friend in the chat, Christopher Rice, he's saying that, basically what he's saying, if I can paraphrase, he's saying that Nick Fuentes doesn't have a choice in what he does, according to you, with your hard determinism. So it's like kind of a moot point. But like you said,
let me just clarify that. Let me clarify that because I do believe, like in the terms of like, maybe like criminal justice or like if you're responsible for your actions,
you go to jail.
Yeah, I think that like what jails should be, rather than trying to like shame or punish individuals, because I don't believe in free will. I think that you gotta let people have the most normal, productive lives that they can, preventing them from damaging other people's lives. So if somebody's a pedophile or whatever, it's not their fault that they feel these attractions to
It's the
children.
kid's fault. It's the kid's fault. Look at what she was wearing.
No, hey, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's not their fault that they have those experiences, like that they're attracted to kids. Like I don't choose who I'm attracted to. Like I'm attracted to women, like adult women. I don't choose that. I just That's who I'm attracted to. So if somebody's attracted to children, it's not their fault. I'm not saying punish them. I'm saying remove them from the ability to harm children.
Yeah.
Like they should be able to live a life where they are not, there's not even an available option for them to be able to be put in the situation where they could harm a child.
Let me ask you.
Prison, whatever.
Yeah. So point well taken. I understand your perspective on that. And I just want to ask you a sort of a controversial question. Let's say, and I want you to be honest with me from your moral whatever you got going on. Be honest with me. If there were 4 generations of men, so the son with the father, grandfather, and the great-grandfather, and they love each other and they want to get kinky and do all kinds of sex stuff and get married to each other and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of people will find it disgusting, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, I think it's super weird.
But is there anything wrong with it if they're all consenting and they all love each other and they want to get married and have kinky sex? Is there anything objectively wrong with it? Or is it just cringy and gross?
I would honestly, if it were just me, I would just steer clear. I would not be trying to interact with those people. I wouldn't be trying to tell them what they're doing. As long as they're not harming people. Like,
do you think they're harming each other?
Huh?
Do you think they're harming each other, especially the young one?
I think, well, it depends on how young we're talking. If he's not capable of giving consent because he's too young.
No. He gave consent. He gave consent when they bribed him with candy.
Well, that's not consent.
That's not consent? What is consent then?
Informed consent is different than, just bribing somebody with candy. I don't think that a child is capable of giving informed consent.
Okay.
Like, because they're not old enough to be able to truly understand the ramifications of these actions. So they're not capable of giving.
So it depends what you know. It depends on what you know. Oh, you're starting to sound very, very Christian here.
I don't know. I guess you can interpret it that way, but I don't.
I'm just poking fun at you. But that's the thing. Like, if you're gonna be a hard determinist, you don't believe in free will, and live and let live, and all that sort of stuff, nominalist and whatever. Basically, you are, whether you like to admit it or not, you're a moral relativist. And you basically, when you told me your little story about how to control populations, it was nothing more or less than might makes right. That's all it is. It's just like we have to control certain behaviors and keep these people away from those people, and it's for the greater good. That's what you'll say. It's for the greater good, and we want you to be. We want you to be. You use the word normal. Like, what the hell is normal for you? What the hell is normal for you, if not the Judeo-Christian morality of the 10 Commandments and everything else and virtue? That's what's normal, and that's what's normal.
Moral curve, right? And normal would be anything within one standard deviation.
Oh boy. So it's shifting. It's really shifting. What's normal?
What is normal does shift throughout history. Yes.
Anyway, I hope.
And I would say, like, overall principle of minimizing harm is good for society.
Yeah, and then you have to ask what's harm.
On a certain, like, I am a moral anti-realist, and that I don't think that there's an objective morality. But that doesn't mean that I think that all moralities are equal. I think some are better and some are worse. But I do also acknowledge that goes along with my own subjective values and priorities. Like, I think that human suffering is not a good thing. So I think that any morality system that minimizes suffering versus one that has a lot of unnecessary suffering is, like, those are not equivalent systems to me. So if you want to say ultimately might makes right, well, obviously, if one moral system, just like, sorry about that. Obviously, if one moral system, dominates over everybody else and literally kills everyone that doesn't agree with them, then there's no other competitor moral system anymore. Like, one doesn't exist. Everybody that held that term is gone. So yeah, I mean, it kind of is a might make right kind of thing, but I don't think, like, just subjectively, I think that I can make moral judgments on based on my own values and priorities of what is, what I think is good and bad.
Yeah, well, there's so many more things that we could explore here. Like my friend,
History reflects that as well. I think, like, if the history of humanity is the history of competing moral systems, and you obviously see a might make right kind of thing. I mean, the reason that we have Judeo-Christian values is because the Roman Empire physically imposed them on people by force.
well, I mean, it was mandated, if you want to use that word.
I mean, ultimately, I see might makes right in the story of Christianity as well, with imposing that by force on pagans.
Yeah, I mean, like Muhammad said, if I'm gonna quote Muhammad in the Quran,
All right.
there could be no compulsion. There could be no compulsion in religion. Like, I mean, there just can't. Like, I mean, you can, like, I could kidnap you. I'm not going to do this, but I could kidnap you and torture you until you say yes. Now I'm Catholic. Can I please go home now? And that's not a conversion. I'm sorry. Like I would just be fooling myself if I thought I made a convert that way. Even though you said it, you signed the paper and whatever, it's not a true conversion, and it never is. It never is. Even if it's just the peer pressure of your peer group that makes you pretend to be Christian or Hindu or Buddhist.
And the history of the Trinity, right? Because the Trinity would be an aspect of your Catholic faith, but the only reason why the majority of Christians today believe in the Trinity is because all the Christians that didn't believe in the Trinity were killed. I mean, they literally, at one point in early Christian history, I mean, with the Arianists and the ones that were saying that the Trinity is not real, I mean, the king had his entire family beheaded in front of him because they refused to acknowledge the Trinity, and then he was killed after watching his entire family get beheaded. And that was Christian on Christian violence, just because they disagreed about the Trinity, or are they really, Jesus and God are separate people, or separate gods or whatever. So, I mean, I see this sort of might makes right morality imposition just within the story of Christianity itself. That seems to me like the way that's how morals have worked for all of human history.
My friend Christopher Rice says, the mixing of church with state is something Christ told us to avoid. It's a bad idea. My friend Christopher is a Protestant. He's not a Catholic, but that's he's just given his 2 cents.
I believe that was not Christ, but Thomas Jefferson that came up with the separation.
Oh, the great prophet Thomas Jefferson.
He did write his own version of the Bible.
I know. I had a copy of that. Yeah, edited version. There's a lot more we could say, but you're my 4th guest, and I gotta go do other things. But it was a pleasure meeting you. You're a bright young man, and you can come back again sometime if you want to talk about anything you're excited about. You wanted to promote some of your videos you're making, and I'm going to send you the link to this one. You can post it on your thing if you want to share it. And come back anytime. We'll just chat about science, religion, faith, philosophy, whatever, or history, whatever you want. Okay.
Okay. Sweet. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it was fun.
Take good care, my friend.
Thank you very much.
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.